Hello and welcome to the big picture. The Gujarat government has notified an act which makes voting compulsory by citizens for local self-governments. This act, which was passed in 2009, had been rejected by then Gujarat Governor Kamla Beniwal, which had forced the government to pass it again in 2011, both times under then Chief Minister Narendra Modi. Now with the new governor in place, the act got his approval and the notification has followed. This has raised a debate about whether Prime Minister Narendra Modi would try to get a similar legislation passed for the entire country. Compulsory voting is at present prevalent in 22 countries across the world, while it is enforced in only 11 of these 22 countries. They include countries like Australia, Brazil, Argentina, Singapore, among others. Can compulsory voting on the Gujarat model be enforced all over the country? Is the Gujarat model sustainable both practically and legally? What are the pros and cons of compulsory voting in a vast and diverse country like India? We will discuss all this today with an eminent panel of guests. I have with me Soli Sorabjee, former Attorney General of India and an eminent jurist, S.Y. Qureshi, former Chief Election Commissioner of India, Siddharth Varadarajan, a senior journalist and former editor of The Hindu, and will soon be joined by Dr. Jagdeep Chokkar. Welcome to all of you. Mr. Qureshi, I would like to come to you first. Is this something which the Election Commission at any point of time had envisaged? Has the Election Commission discussed about this issue at any point of time?
No, this topic has come up before Election Commission hundreds of times.
Yeah.
Every now and then people make this suggestion and we have been rejecting it. And our reason for rejecting it was that one, that the right to vote includes right not to vote. And therefore in democracy, a compulsion is out of place. And secondly, we also have more practical reasons. Because if you make it compulsory and if somebody doesn't vote, he is in violation of law, for which he will be punished. And even if that punishment is a fine of 1 rupee, we are a civilized country, we have due process of law. And what is that? We will issue a notice to you, a legal notice. And in other words, we will start court cases against you, in which case crores of cases will get started after every election. As it is, our courts are have so many pending cases, and every now and then we will be adding to those. So therefore, it's not practical. And we have been suggesting that voter education is an idea which has taken the voting percentage to 80% and in one case to 93%.
Right.
And that is a line which has been proven 100% in the last 3 years, and that needs to be pursued.
Okay. Mr. Sorabjee, Mr. Qureshi feels that it is not you must have heard what he said, that it's not viable in this country. But the fact of the matter is that there is this government, state government, Gujarat, which has now issued notification as far as the law is concerned. The law has been passed, the governor has approved it. It will be, of course, only applicable to the local self bodies, which means the municipalities, the corporations, and local self, I'm sure even the rural local self bodies. Now, what will happen? The questions raised by Mr. Qureshi: how do you deal with people who don't vote? And do you think that this will lead to? And I've been looking at the figures of the voting percentages in Gujarat in the local self bodies elections. It has never crossed 60%. Most of the time, it's between 45 and 55%.
I'm in broad agreement with what Mr. Qureshi has said. In the first place, Supreme Court has held in one context that freedom of expression, freedom of speech includes freedom not to speak.
Not to speak.
Now, where is the legal obligation under the Constitution that a person must vote? We have fundamental duties in our Constitution, whether judicially enforceable or not, that apart. But even to vote is not one of the fundamental duties in Article 51A. So where do you get this obligation? How can you compel a citizen upon pain of penalty to vote? Well, he should vote. As a conscious citizen, he should vote, but he may have reasons not to vote at all. I don't think this is little vulnerable, I think, constitutionally, and not at all practical in implementation. I entirely agree with Mr. Qureshi.
Not at all practical. Yes. I think we have Siddharth Varadarajan on the phone line. Siddharth, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Siddharth, how would you look at this? Because, let us look at the practical issue of it. Both my panelists earlier have expressed their views, but this is a law now in Gujarat. Of course, the rules are yet to be made as far as what are going to be the penalties which will be imposed if you don't vote. But this is something which the Gujarat government, if it's going to implement, what kind of problems do you envisage?
No, you see, the thing is that my sense is that apart from the unconstitutionality of this and the impracticability of this measure, what worries me also is the mindset which comes up with this kind of law. Because I think that it represents a certain illiberal approach to democracy. Mr. Sorabjee is absolutely right when he says that there can be no compulsion in the Indian constitutional scheme on a citizen to cast his or her vote. And it's no good pointing to the experience of or the laws of other countries, like say Australia or Brazil, which have compulsory voting, because every country has its own political culture, its own constitutional history and ethos, and making it compulsory for voters is certainly not part of the Indian scheme of things and cannot be justified in any way. And the mindset of politicians who come up with these kinds of proposals, I think, worries me a little bit, because it's not as if there aren't deficiencies or problems with the way in which democracy functions in India. I think there are any number of reforms that one could think of that would strengthen the rights of the citizen, give her a greater voice in decision making, but this isn't one of them. And this is, in a sense, insisting that they vote on pain of legal punishment, is certainly going to make democracy more remote and more distant from the average voter, even if it's packaged as something which is going to encourage higher participation rates. So I think that this is an illiberal decision. It should never have been signed by the governor. I think it was held back. Whatever the partisan reasons between the Congress and the BJP, it was held back correctly. And the fact that it has now been introduced into law is a little worrying thing, because we know with our current setup that what happened in Gujarat, Gujarat is in many ways the test bed for many administrative and legal reforms that this government, the Prime Minister, is trying to do. So it's a little bit worrying if this kind of an idea, which has now been passed in Gujarat, if there's going to be any attempt to replicate this at a wider level, quite apart from the fact that it ought not to be the law of Gujarat itself.
Okay. Dr. Chokkar, what is this about this law? First of all, you think that this is something which should be done?
No, I don't think it should be done. As has been said by Dr. Qureshi, Mr. Sorabjee and so on, in a democracy is actually essentially something about choice.
Right.
In a democracy, when you force people to do something, I think it goes against the basic tenets of democracy, number one. Number two, when this bill was introduced the first time towards the end of 2009,
right,
I wrote a piece in the Tribune in 2010 January, where I said that the then Chief Minister of Gujarat had said that one of the purposes of this bill is to bring the citizen to the center stage of politics.
Right. That is one of the arguments, actually.
No, that is one of the arguments, but there is a flip side to that argument. Till today, and it was said in a TV interview also, that the political system is political party centric. Now, instead of trying to push political parties to the background, why don't we make political parties internally democratic? If political parties were to function democratically, if candidates were to be chosen democratically, I dare say the voting percentages will go up. One of the reasons why people don't vote is because they don't have a real choice. Because in every constituency, there may be 15-20 candidates, but the serious candidates are only 2 or 3. And in give me half a minute.
Yeah.
And in our election watch analysis, we also do what is called a red alert constituency analysis.
Right.
Where 3 or more candidates have criminal cases against them. in those constituencies where is the choice for a voter. And this happens
This
because
compulsory thing happens.
if the compulsory thing happens, the voters will be forced
No, but the
to vote for these people.
No, but Mr. Dr. Chokkar, I think I need to clarify. I'm not very sure what the compulsory voting law in other countries at least includes a nota option. You know, the nota option is also applicable there.
When this was passed in 2009, number
There
one,
was
there
no
was no
nota
nota option.
Right.
Today there is a nota option, but nota option is not available in the local body elections as yet.
Okay.
The Supreme Court judgment for nota applies only to state assembly and parliament elections.
Right.
But the point is not whether it is local bodies or parliament or state assembly. The point is of the principle.
Absolutely.
You force voters to vote. You do not choose, you do not elect candidates democratically. We are still in a stranglehold of political parties. Instead of forcing voters to vote, why can't we force political parties either not to give tickets to undesirable people? In Maharashtra elections, 57% of the MLAs have criminal cases against them. Why can't we do that? Or why can't we force political parties?
Dr. Chokkar, I don't know whether it is one of the motivations or intentions behind this law to keep keep such elements out of the electoral. I don't think that is the motivation.
The stated intention is to increase voting percentage.
Absolutely.
I am saying voting percentage is low because criminals are being given tickets.
Okay. But Mr. Qureshi, coming back to you. Now let us, I'm looking at the laws which are there, which are being enforced in 11 countries. 22 countries, this law is there. Out of them, in 11 countries, they are being enforced, including Australia, Brazil, Argentina, Bolivia, Belgium, and all. Now, let us say in Australia, there were elections in 2013. 92% of the people have voted. 6% apparently have given some reasons not to vote. So now, in that kind of a situation, if a country like Australia, which is also a democracy like ours, can manage to pull off this kind of thing for quite some years now, why not India?
Girish, in fact, your question has two answers, and I would like to use them. You mentioned 22 countries which have the law, but only 11 are implementing it.
Right.
The question is, why are the other 11 not implementing? Now, secondly, Australia, with all the compulsion and all these years behind us, I talked to my counterpart in Australia a couple of years ago, and he said they are fed up because if you don't vote, and after all the litigation, the fine is $50. And to collect that $50, they end up spending $5,000. And after all that, if the turnout is 92%, then, that is the important thing to note. Because in Tirupura, we had 93% turnout without compulsion. When we are already reaching 80, 85, 90, 93, with love and persuasion, where is the need for a danda? And secondly, Australia, as somebody earlier pointed out, a small country. In 5 years, 2009 to 14, we have added 4 Australias to our voters. Now, the size and dimension, and in many countries, there is a prolonged voting, advance voting for 1 month, you continue to vote, and the distance voting, there are so many other things. Here it is a one-day thing. What about a landless labor, daily wager? He will go hungry if he comes out to vote. Although for other employers, there is a law that they have supposed to give a paid holiday. Now, a daily wage worker does not have the benefit of a paid holiday. He cannot enjoy the luxury of voting at the cost of his family going hungry. So therefore, we have to see the picture in totality. And at the same time, the voter turnout, why it is low, is an important issue. How to deal with this, that is what we should look at.
Okay.
And I strongly feel that voter education is the answer.
In fact, Mr. Qureshi, I was looking at the voting percentages which I mentioned earlier also. In Ahmedabad, 2009-10, 44%, Vadodara, 44%, Surat, 42%, Rajkot, 41%, Junagadh, 56%, Bhavnagar. So, at this rate, 50% of the voters in these municipalities or corporations in Gujarat will have to be paying whatever penalties are imposed. Mr. Sorabjee,
Yes.
now,
Yes. Yes, just one second, Giriji.
Yes,
If I can come in here.
Yes.
You know, when we set up this voter education division, Bihar and UP were the cases in front of us. In UP, in Allahabad, in Varanasi, in other places, Lucknow, the turnout used to be 25%, 30%. And through voter education, in 5 years, we have taken it to 60%. So just as we have done it there, I'm sure even in Gujarat, municipalities through voter education, it can be increased.
Okay, Mr. Sorabjee, the question is about penalties or the fines or whatever is, because compulsory voting doesn't make sense unless there is some kind of a penalty or punishment for not voting. So in the case of Gujarat, we are hearing that some of the things, the rules have not been formulated. We don't know what kind of punishment or penalties they would be imposing on voters who don't vote. But the question is that there are some hints being given about, say, withdrawing their BPL card, or their discontinuing their government subsidy for kerosene or gas and things like that. You think something like this can be constitutionally or legally valid at all?
No, the first question is of principle. Where is the obligation on a citizen to vote? Where has the Constitution made it his fundamental duty to vote? If you want to do it, amend the Constitution, say every citizen must vote. Then, of course, when the citizen votes, he can say no party. He can exercise his franchise not in fear of any party. But this, I think, is really asking for trouble. You're right. Voter education, very well. Now, what will you do to recover penalties? You'll take how many years? How much will you spend? So I think as a matter of principle, in the absence of any obligation on a person to vote, I don't think any state can pass a law which makes it compulsory for him to vote upon pain of penalties.
So you
That's
think
the main question.
So
the
you
impracticality, Mr. Qureshi has very well pointed out, and that's a factor to be taken into account also.
So Mr. Sorabjee, you think that this law which
Sorry, you were
has been,
saying something?
yeah, you think that this law which has been passed in Gujarat is constitutionally invalid? Because there has to be a constitutional amendment to bring about.
Prima facie, I haven't seen the rule. I think so. But I haven't seen the act in its totality. I don't know the rules. Frankly, I don't have the benefit of that. But unless there is a constitutional obligation imposed upon a person to vote, I think by statute you can compel him to vote upon pain of penalties. That's a short point, in my view, which will make this legislation vulnerable.
Okay, Siddharth, let me play the devil's advocate here, because the thing is, one of the arguments of people who are in favor of compulsory voting is that the kind of low percentage voting which we witness in many parts of the country, though as Mr. Qureshi rightly points out that it has been steadily going up, but still we see very low percentage in many places. Now, this gives certain lobbies the advantage of gathering the little number of votes which are there, and so the remaining huge percentage of people who have not voted find themselves completely helpless.
I think that this, there is an issue with turnout. It's important that people who have the right to vote exercise this right. But the solution to this is not to focus excessively on the procedural aspects of democracy or elections, but on the substantive aspects. The point Mr. Chokkar made about the way in which candidates are selected is an important factor. How local self-government or how municipalities, unless people feel a sense of belonging, unless they feel that these tiers of government actually are in a position, are empowered to deliver things to them, they're not going to feel a sense of ownership over them. The role of money power in elections, I think these are the areas in which we need to focus our attention for reform, rather than mechanically mandating that people must vote on pain of penalty. These kinds of procedural, preoccupations take us away from the spirit and content of democracy. And as I said, they're a reflection of an illiberal, technocratic mindset, which does not want to address the actual flaws and weaknesses in the Indian system as it exists,
but Siddharth,
and instead wants to divert attention away to these cosmetic aspects.
But Siddharth, if I'm sure if you remember, during the time when this bill was being discussed, it was passed in Gujarat. Mr. Narendra Modi was the chief minister at that time. He was very passionately advocating this. He said that when other countries can do it, why not us? Australia can do it, Brazil can do it, why not us? So there is a certain amount of passion, there is a certain amount of commitment, there is a certain amount of conviction as far as Mr. Modi was concerned. Now that he is the prime minister, so there is this legitimate thinking. Yeah.
You are right. I think Mr. Modi and others would do well to look at the practice of democracy in other countries. But let this be a holistic exercise. Let us look, for example, at the fact that you have strict limits on what political parties can spend in elections. In our recent election, political parties, BJP, Congress, etc., as parties spent almost as much as Obama spent in his entire presidential election. Right. So I think let's look at campaign finance reform. Let's look at limits. These are the things that we need to learn from other countries rather than punitive aspects that, as I said, are not going to deepen the nature of democracy in India, are not going to empower citizens in the way that citizens are crying out to be empowered. Instead, you're going to strengthen the stranglehold of political parties with their corrupt practices, with their top-down approach, and that's the last thing that Indian democracy needs right now.
Mr. Sorabjee, would you agree with Siddharth on that?
Substantially. And we can't really take the example of other countries. We have to look at our own constitutional ethos, our own conditions. Australia compared to India is what? UP?
No, not even
the
UP, I think.
The main question is, I think, one of principle.
No.
Where is the obligation to vote on a citizen? By which law?
Okay, Mr. Qureshi.
Unless the constitution makes it obligatory, I don't think state government can do it. State legislature can do it.
Okay, Mr. Qureshi.
Yes.
Mr. Qureshi, Siddharth's point that but also along with that is the point that here is a prime minister who thinks he's convinced that this is something which needs to be done. There has to be a compulsory voting. People are getting left out. People are getting left out of the process. It's become a club of a few people, few lobbyists, a few people getting involved in this. The larger people are getting out of the system.
In fact, the basic concern that people are left out of an electoral system is very genuine and needs to be respected. But there are many reasons. One reason is that there used to be violence at the polling station and no gentleman would like to come there. If there is a bomb blast or an explosion or some fight, people don't want to come there. We have to create peaceful conditions. Number two, the kind of people who are giving candidates. It is common knowledge that the respect for politicians is very, very low because of the quality of candidates that are put up. We have lots of them with murder, rape and dacoity cases against them. Therefore, the esteem of the politicians has to improve, the quality of the candidates has to improve, and all these things will contribute to the better participation, better facilitation at the polling station. And as I said, of all things which we have tested and tried, I'm not just talking theory. Before the general election, 22 states had gone to poll after Election Commission set up this voter education division. Out of 22, 17 recorded highest turnout in history. So therefore it is tested and tried, and the general election also gave you the highest ever turnout in 66 years. So therefore, these 3-4 things are together, whereas general concern that there should be larger participation is well taken, and we have to look at the thing more calmly and in totality.
Okay, Dr. Chokkar, my question is this, because we have seen election as journalists when we travel during elections, on the voting day especially, we see a huge number of people especially in certain states in this country, who are not even allowed to vote, because of various reasons. In a village, if you go, that a dominant group will not allow the less dominant groups to vote and things like that. So one of the arguments is that these kind of things will be avoided if there is a compulsory voting.
I mean, I am amazed at this argument. If the dominant group can prevent a significant proportion from voting, can they not force this segment to vote for whoever they want? Number one. Let me go back a bit. There may be 20 reasons for low voter turnout or what is called voter apathy. Now, those reasons have to be listed in order of priority. Which is more important and which is easier to solve and which goes in the general direction of a democratic participation. What Dr. Qureshi has been saying with love and affection, with cajolement, is democratic way of getting people to vote. Another reason, in my opinion, and I am sure this is not untrue, is voter apathy and the lowering of the prestige of politicians has happened because of the quality of people who contest elections. And the quality of people is determined entirely by the heads of political parties.
No, but
people have no say there.
Dr. Chokkar, I have a problem there. If you look back at the voting percentages right through from 1952 onwards,
yes,
when we thought that in the 50s and 60s, better candidates used to be contesting at that time.
Yes.
If you compare them with what we see now, but even then the voting percentages were never beyond 60%.
They were not beyond 60%, but they were not 23%. With the quality of people that are being put up by political parties, the disenchantment of people with the entire political establishment has gone up very seriously. And this is the danger to democracy, not people not voting. People not voting is a symptom, a manifestation.
Yes.
The root of the problem is the quality of people in democracy today.
Mr. Qureshi, yes, you wanted to react?
Yes, Girish. Yes, Girish, actually I wanted to draw your attention to what you said earlier. That is where the danger is. You say people forcibly can prevent voters from voting. Now the same people, once it becomes compulsory, then they will be doing it with a bigger vengeance that if they prevent you, you will not be able to vote. And then you will be given all kinds of punishment, including your BPL card taken away, maybe your passport taken away, maybe your voting right taken away. So actually that what your question actually somewhere even without you knowing underlines a very serious consequence which may follow.
Absolutely serious consequences. No, but that's why do you think that, what is the motivation then for this, how is it that this whole thing has come about despite what you said at the election commission level? I am told that even at the Supreme Court level there is a case pending in the Supreme Court where Supreme Court has asked for opinion from the government, election commission and all. Even Supreme Court is exercised about it. Why is it exercised about it if prima facie, as Mr. Sorabjee says, that it is unconstitutional, unless and until there is a constitutional amendment brought in, you cannot have this kind of a law. I want both you and Mr. Sorabjee to react and also Siddharth.
In fact, let me point out, if I may point out.
Yes, Mr. Qureshi.
Who is to answer this?
Girish? Yeah, you please finish.
Yes. Recently, recently in the Nota judgment, Supreme Court came out with a very significant observation, very specifically for the first time. When they said, so far, as far as I know, Mr. Sorabjee can correct me, nowhere had they said the right to vote is a constitutional right. They always said it is a statutory right. For the first time in the Nota judgment, the Supreme Court said that your right not to vote is a part of your right to expression which can be enforced. In fact, right not to vote has been declared a fundamental right. And if it is a fundamental right, it is basic structure of the Constitution, and therefore nothing will stand against this.
Okay, Mr. Sorabjee, is that how you interpret it?
Well, this legislation certainly will run into constitutional trouble. And the main question is, again repeat, where is the fundamental duty or obligation of a person to vote? If not, how can you compel him to vote for the state legislature?
Absolutely.
After all, democracy is a question of choice. He may choose not to vote or not to vote for good, valid reasons, not because of voter apathy as such.
Okay. Siddharth, very quick.
Frankly, I think the end may be good. The end may be good, but the end, laudable end must be achieved by permissible constitutional means.
Okay, that's you put it very well there. Siddharth, very quick final words to you. You think that after all this, still there would be an attempt to get this kind of a law even at the state level in Gujarat, or at the national level, you think that could be possible in the current circumstances?
I think it is entirely possible because there is a strong illiberal streak in our ruling politicians, and this is precisely the kind of approach that they would be willing to try in order to suggest that they are serious about democratic reform.
Okay.
If you look at the experience of Australia and Brazil, in fact, in Australia,
Siddharth,
1/3 of young voters haven't even bothered to register to vote.
Siddharth, Siddharth, we have completely run out of time. Sorry. This discussion can go on. I'm sure there will be more discussions if there is an attempt to bring this at the national level. But it is very clear from an eminent jurist like Mr. Soli, Sorabjee and Mr. Qureshi, who has been working the system as such, that that this is a law which has been brought by Gujarat, may not stand this legal scrutiny. We'll wait and watch what will happen. Thanks to all my guests, Mr. Soli Sorabjee, S.Y. Qureshi, Siddharth Varadarajan and Dr. Jagdeep Chokkar. Please keep watching. We'll come back with another issue in Big Picture same time tomorrow.